Another thing that we can do with backgrounds is give them a linear gradient. So we can gradiate the color from one to another. So notice that in our footer we have just this dark green color, and that style that was already given to us, and it's just a solid color. So we're going to change this. We're going to write a new background for the footer. So go into the Visual 1 style sheet and find the footer styles. And here we'll add a style block for a footer. And we're going to use the background property. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add the linear gradient function. And in this function, we're going to first add a color, RGB. And inside there, we're going to put 3 colors. So we're going to, the red, green, and blue, right? 172, 232, 172. So that's the first color. Then the second property for this function is another color. So we'll do RGB and parentheses, and we'll do 21, 35, 21. All right, so we do that and we come back and refresh. And what you see is we go from this light color and there's a gradient that goes to the dark color. So our first color, this color is the light green, right? You see the light green here, and then it goes to the dark green. And it just does it in a gradient way. Now there's some other parameters that we can send to this function that will change how this looks. And we're going to play with it in the graphic demo file. So if you haven't downloaded that yet, there's a graphicdemo.zip file. And here it has a way to be able to test all these properties that we've been learning. And here we want to do the linear gradient demo. And what we're going to do, notice that I only used 2 colors, but you can use as many different color stops as you want. You just put a comma and add a different color stop. So for example, we could add another one in here, and let's just add red and see what happens. And there, it goes from the light green to the dark green to red. So there's 3 different colors in there. Now, that wasn't a really good choice, right? That's certainly not aesthetically pleasing. So we'll take that off. But you can go ahead and add lots of colors. And this demo shows you that. It shows you that they're allowing you to do 5. So what we're going to do is say we're going to use color stop 1, and let's just pick a color. So there's a color for 1. So say okay. And then we'll pick a color for 2. And say okay. And there's what we're getting. So see it, how it goes from that blue color to the pink color, and it transitions. So notice they've got a first property here that actually swapped it, but went from blue gradient to that pink. And then if we wanted to add another one, so let's go ahead and say let's add a yellow. Then it would be a third. So the blue, the pink, the yellow. All right, another property, every time that you have a color stop, you can say how long you want it to last. So let's say we want the first one to go 20%. And you can do percent or pixels. So we want to do percent of the distance. So we're going to say that first color stop will happen 20% of the distance. So notice what happened. Right there with that first color, it added a percent. And that gave it, that said, we're going to keep this color for 20%. So that blue stayed for 20% before it started the gradient. And that's what it says. So this first color stop lasts 20% of the time. And then we can do this and we can say, okay, we want this to be 60%. Well, let's do 80. Let's make it big so we see it. 80%. So now what it did is it says go from, the first stop is the green and it stays that 20%. And then it says from there, so from 20% to 80%, go ahead and do the gradient to the pink. And then the rest of the way you'll do the yellow, that gradient the gradient to the end. So that last 20% just does that. If we added one more, let's say 90%, then what happens is we have the color stop 0 to 20% will be that blue. And then from 20 to 80% will be the gradient to the pink. And then from 80% to 90% will be the gradient from the pink to the yellow. And then that last 10% will be the solid yellow. So color stops, you can add a color and you can add a stop if you want, a percentage if you want. Or you can leave it blank. Notice that in this case we left it blank. Well, we want to add a color stop right here of 80%. So we'll add 80% there. And what this says is from the beginning to 80%, we're going to do a gradient from the light color to the dark color. So let's go see what that looks like. So here we said from the first 80%, go from the light color to the dark color, and then the last 20% will be just the dark color. So it just shifted where it ended the gradient. Another thing that we can do is change the direction, and there's several ways to change the direction. So you can use it with keywords, and the keywords, so we can say left, so we can say to left. See how it puts the to in front? So to left, which means it's going to start with the color and go to the left. And so that's what that first one means. We can also go to the right. So there's to the right, which just changed the direction. Notice our percentages are still there, so we're still seeing those stops where we had them set before. But we can also go to the right top. So here it starts here and goes to the right top. So you have lots of those options. Another thing that you can do is do it with the degree wheel, right? So you start degrees and you go clockwise, 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. So you can put a degrees in there, and then that will change it. Oh, I have to get rid of these to be able to use the degrees. Okay, so now this says 175 degrees. So remember 180 is almost to the bottom, so it's going to the bottom, but it's going at just a bit of an angle. And then, so this allows you to go at a variety of angles. There's the 280, which is almost left to right, right? Let's go with just a little bit of an angle and see what we get. There's a 65 degree angle. So that's the degree angle in that direction. Anyway, so you can play with the degrees or to and from. And what we want, so let's change this. So right now we have it just going straight from top to bottom. We haven't specified a direction. And so let's go ahead and specify the direction of 345 degrees. And this is going to be the first parameter. So we'll do 345. Degrees is just write DEG and a comma. Save that and refresh. And there we have a gradient. Now, if you think about the circle of 345 is up in this direction. And that's where we see it going, up in that direction. So the gradient is going on an angle. And then staying with that dark green for the last 20%. So there you go. We've added a linear gradient.